Evening and welcome to Monday, October 24th, East China School District Board of Education meeting. If you would please stand with me for a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, our next item is items of interest, recognition, and inquiry. Board of Education members. I would just like to say thank you to Lindsay Chalk for her service. We really appreciate you stepping up, and this will be your last meeting fulfilling the seat that you're appointed to. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Mrs. Fabiola?
I'm all set tonight, thank you.
Okay. All right, then moving right along, special recognition, East China Educational Foundation grants with Mr. Domagowski and Mr. Miller.
Good evening. President Frank, members of the board, Superintendent Fabiola. I'm Mike Domagowski along with Ronald Miller here as part of the East China Educational Foundation. I'm just going to talk about some of the grants that were given out over the last week and then going to the district. So really quick, I just want to plug this slide right here. We ran an outstanding fundraiser on August 22nd at the St. Clair Golf Club for East China schools. That was very successful. And we may even have another opportunity to talk about the Chili Heart Run, but we run that every February, and that's going to be talked about here pretty soon with the foundation. So those are our two fundraisers for our foundation. Really quick about the foundation, it is an endowment fund through the Community Foundation of St. Clair County with the awards that I'm going to talk about tonight that are going to be rewarded. The foundation has been granted, or has granted over $197,000 in its existence to staff members in the district. Tonight, 10 grants ranging from $175 to $750 will be awarded tonight for a total of $4,974.15. The grant awards are given to the East China School District for use by the grant applicant. So, on to the 10 grants. Congratulations to Marnie Williams from the Marine City campus. And as I mention these names, if you are in attendance, please come in to receive your grant. Marnie Williams of the Marine City campus. Marnie will be purchasing clay and fire glaze sets to learn about sculptures, clay hand building techniques, glazing techniques, and how to create 3D work. There it goes. Janet Gangwer. Ms. Gangwer will purchase Civil War replica uniforms to use with her 8th grade students. Students will be able to see themselves looking like a Civil War soldier, and it will help them write from the perspective of a soldier with battlefield experiences, life in camp, etc., etc. Stephanie Manano from Palms Elementary School. Ms. Manano will be purchasing materials for learning centers in her kindergarten classroom. The learning centers will allow children to investigate, explore, and discover things that are new to them and make connections with things that they already know. Also at Palms Elementary, Megan Schindler. Ms. Schindler will use her grant award to purchase materials that will assist with foundation skills for phonemic awareness and number sense. The materials purchased will support literacy and math skills. Kelly Robbins from Pine River Elementary is receiving another award. Mrs. Robbins will purchase 6 Wonder Workshop gripper building kits for Dash. The students in Mrs. Robbins' technology classrooms will benefit from this purchase. Congratulations, and I say again because Kelly seems to be up here every couple months. Caitlin Click from Gearing Elementary School. Ms. Click will use her grant award to host a Gym Basketball Jones Assembly at Gearing Elementary. The Gym Basketball Jones Assembly will focus on being kind, doing the right thing with an anti-bullying message. From Gearing Elementary as well, Amy Lawson. Mrs. Lawson will be purchasing books to use in her speech language therapy sessions. The books will help teach verbs to her students. The next award is for Jessica Simmons from St. Clair High. Ms. Simmons will purchase a yearly subscription to Pear Deck, booklet, quizzes, Gimkit, and Quizlet. Wow, that's a tongue twister. This project allows students to practice vocabulary online with their Chromebooks. The next award recipient is Lori Hannon from St. Clair Middle School. Ms. Hannon will purchase on a commercial grade paper cutter for the use in her art room. She also will be purchasing pre-cut frames for displaying student artwork. Christy Musket from Bell River Elementary School will be purchasing a building fact fluency toolkit for multiplication and division. The toolkit will be used to encourage students to think strategically about mathematics through multiple, rich, real-world contexts. And so congratulations to all of our award recipients. To donate, we do accept donations. You can make checks payable to the Community Foundation of St. Clair County with East China Educational Foundation. Send your checks to the East China School District and right to the superintendent's office. We love doing this each year, or several times per year, and it's our pleasure to award the 10 recipients this year for the fall of 2022. Yep. We're going to get one photo op real quick. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, our next item is Academic Spotlight, Gearing Elementary, with Mrs. Nicole Kirby, Principal.
Good evening, Superintendent Saibula, President Frank, and members of the school board. I'm here tonight to talk to you about how Gearing is implementing and incorporating social-emotional learning in our building. Here with me tonight is Kristen Washburn, who will help me demonstrate our newest program a little later. She's going to be way up there and on the top. So this year, Gearing chose the theme, Making Connections, after we recognized as a disjointed couple of years that we've had since the March 2020 shutdown in the anticipation of being able to have what at least this year felt like a normal year, we knew we needed to focus on building back relationships and making connections with our students, our families, and our staff. One way we are addressing this is with our students is incorporating social emotional learning into our routines. So what is it? Social and emotional learning is an educational concept that helps kids gain skills in important areas beyond math, reading, and other core school subjects. It helps kids identify their feelings, understand and communicate with others, build strong relationships, and make good, empathetic decisions. What are the benefits? Well, we see academic success. Developing stronger social emotional skills improves the academic performance of students. Oops, there we go. We see fewer behavior problems because students engaged in SEL are less aggressive and disruptive in school. We see less emotional distress because students feel safe and connected. And when students form connections, they exhibit positive social behaviors. There we go. Components of social emotional learning are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And why is that important? Our students develop empathy, learn emotion regulation, problem-solving skills, decision-making skills, communication skills, relationships with friends and family, self-knowledge, and self-control. And why do we need it now? While remote learning made school possible during the pandemic and kids with certain educational and learning styles saw some benefits from remote learning, for many, this disruption was incredibly difficult. It wasn't just a loss of classroom learning and adjusting to a remote school day. Kids went without the social structure school provides, such as daily peer interaction, athletics, arts, activities, field trips, and other events. Kids experience a safe and stable structure attending school, including access to meals and social work services. And finally, for some, they have lost a parent, grandparent, or caregiver to the virus, or watched someone close to them battle the virus or complications from the virus. We found as our elementary students, they didn't always understand what was going on at that time. So one of the programs that we have been doing is Calm Classroom. Calm Classroom provides us with research-based mindfulness techniques we use to help students and staff to care for their mental and emotional health. The techniques help us manage stress and anxiety and improves working memory, emotion, regulation, and self-monitoring. And so we have 3-minute scripted techniques that the teachers can lead or students. It involves breathing, stretching, focusing, and relaxation techniques. And that helps promote self-awareness, a focused attention, and helps students understand how to regulate their nervous systems and improve their mental health and well-being. I have 2 quick videos, if it's going to advance here. There we go. Not going to cooperate. There you go.
Slowly lower your arms and exhale. Inhale, stretch up. Hold. Exhale, arms down. Inhale, stretch up. Hold. Exhale, arms down. Inhale, stretch up.
That was a 4th grade classroom, and I also have a short video from a 1st grade classroom.
Open whatever you're comfortable for. Relax your shoulders. We're going to let our whole body be still. Feel the air breathe in and out. In and out. Place your hands together in front of you. We're going to put one arm up at a time. When we put our arm up, we're going to breathe in. When we switch arms, we're going to breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in and hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in and hold it. Breathe out. Let your hands come down slowly into your lap.
Teachers will incorporate those activities usually during a transition time, whether it's coming in from recess or from a specials class or lunch. That helps reset our students and get them ready for learning. Along with many other buildings in the district, we also use the Positivity Project. which helps create a positive culture, build positive relationships, and help students to develop an understanding of others, as well as develop self-awareness and self-confidence. It helps us develop a common vocabulary to help our students become self-aware and empathetic. There are 24 character strengths. There's a few examples up there, such as teamwork, integrity, creativity, bravery, kindness, self-control, perseverance, forgiveness, and leadership. We incorporate these into our daily announcements. Our teachers have access to videos and lessons to use within their classrooms, and we've also linked this to our PBIS program. Our most recent addition, as in just in the last 2 weeks, we have introduced the Heart Math M-Wave program. So this program, we're just in the beginning stages. As I said, we just acquired it 2 weeks ago. But this is also going to help targeted students identify, learn, and practice techniques to reach coherence. Our research shows that if we can spend just 10 minutes a day in focused breathing, we can better regulate our nervous systems, increase problem solving, and memory recall. So a sensor is used to monitor the heart rhythms and confirms when the user is in coherence, which is an optimal physiological state. There are interactive games and visualizers, which we're going to demonstrate for you in just a moment, that help monitor and teach coherence. And while the program is available to all students who need it, we are going to start with some targeted students first and then work out from there. Through this program, we will build resilience, increase energy, promote focus, mental clarity, and emotional balance. And so now here's where Kristen steps in. She's first going to show you, this is just an initial program. It's going to calibrate first. She has a sensor hooked up to her earlobe, and she's just going to breathe. You can see it'll have her pulse at the bottom. And then as she begins breathing, there's a breathing in and out to the right of the screen. And we're going to do about 30 seconds or so. But this, we usually spend about 3 minutes. That helps you achieve that focused breathing. And it's going to start to track. Now, each of our students are going to, all tongue-tied. Each of our students are going to log in using their student ID to keep confidentiality. And then we can also, there's a journal. If you look at the lower right corner, there's a journal so that when they do come in, they can track themselves as how they felt when they came in, why they needed it, how they felt afterwards, and we can use that data to better help them. And so then, Kristen, if we can stop that one. Now, ones that the kids really like is the next one. Here's our visualizer. We click on here. Oh, and she's already breathing. So, oh, what happened? So what you will see, hopefully, is this is one of the games that, they call them a game. The screen starts out, oh, it's going to calibrate. It's going to start out black and white. As she begins breathing, it's going to track the current heart rate, gives our session time and achievement, and then our coherence. So as Kristen is breathing, with the black and white, as she reaches those coherence levels, things are going to start to come into color. And so there are some surprises at the end. This is a 3-minute activity that we would do with students. And now we have some green bushes and trees. And as she keeps going, other things will come in to color. Kristen's doing a great job breathing back there. That's awesome. And so it does become mesmerizing for students as they watch to see what's going to happen next. Let's see. Thank you, Kristen. So we're really excited about being able to bring that to Gearing and seeing how it's going to impact our students. And so to wrap up, we have Calm Classroom, Positivity Project, and the introduction of our Heart Math M-Wave program, which are just our formal ways that we've incorporated social emotional learning into our building. We also use positive behavior intervention supports, and of course, back to those basics of our teachers and staff building relationships by making connections with our students. So what questions might you have?
Do we have any questions?
Looks like a good program.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We also anticipate, yes, maybe some of the staff might come down and use the sensor too, right?
Thanks for all you do, Nicole.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. A motion is needed for the approval of minutes from the September 26th regular meeting, the October 11th special board workshop, approval of the payment of bills, financial statement, schedule of investments, and teacher appointment.
So moved. Support.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. We'll go on now to our committee reports. Mrs. Cybula.
Yes, thank you. I have a superintendent report this evening in response to the concern that was brought forward regarding the book selections in our media centers. I wanted to provide an update. A review and update of our process and procedures has been started. Following are the steps that have been taken since the September board meeting. I have contacted Troon attorneys regarding the concerns that were brought at our board meeting and was advised to take the following steps. The first step was to review our book selection procedures in cooperation with our media specialist, and this was done during our PLC time on October 12th, and the media specialists are putting a document together that will be linked on our website when it is complete. The second step that was recommended by the Troon attorneys was to review our materials reconsideration procedures. This was also done by our media specialist during the PLC time on October 12th, and the request for reconsideration document is currently being reviewed and will also be linked on our ECSD website when it's complete. Another step that has been taken since the September board meeting is I am working with Craig Headley and RISA to research options to provide a report to parents through our student information system, which happens to be Skyward, linked to our media center system, which is Destiny. And it looks like this will be a viable option, and we are just currently working through the details of what that would look like. And I wanted to make a note that our current procedures in our media center checkout do not let a middle school student check out a high school media center book selection and vice versa. This is due to the process for barcoding each book as it is entered into our system. And these procedures will continue when our middle and high schools are in one campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our information and discussion items. First up is Mr. Curtis McBride with our 2021-22 audit.
Good evening, President Frank, Superintendent Cybula, members of the school board. My name is Curtis McBride, and I'm a CPA for McBride Manley and Company. With me this evening is Samantha Hudson, who is one of my partners at the firm. We're both involved in the audit this year, and we are here to present the results of the June 30, 2022 audit of the district. Now, before I get into the presentation, I first want to draw your attention to the thick bound document that you have in front of you from our firm. Now, within that document is our audit report, or our opinion. There are three types of opinions you can receive from your auditor. The first type of opinion is what they call a clean or unmodified audit opinion. That means that your auditor believes your financial statements are fairly stated and they are in compliance with our professional standards. The second type of opinion is what we refer to as a modified opinion, which means that for the most part they are in compliance, but there may be a few exceptions to that. And then the last type of opinion is what we call an adverse audit opinion, which means we do not believe the financial statements are reliable and they are not in compliance with our professional standards. So I am pleased to announce that for June 30, 2022, the district did receive a clean or unmodified audit opinion from our firm. I do want to clarify a couple things with that. Number one, that doesn't mean that there aren't any audit findings, internal control findings. It also doesn't mean that there aren't proposed audit adjustments. That is also possible. And then the third thing is we are only providing an opinion on the reliability of the financial statements. We're not providing any type of opinion on the financial health of the district. That's not the primary focus of our audit. The first fund I want to talk about briefly is the general fund. Now, the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, state aid, and federal, state, and local grants. And looking at the balance sheet for the general fund at June 30, 2022, you can see it had about $12.6 million of assets on hand at the end of the year. It had about $5.67 million of liabilities against those assets, and finished the year with an ending fund balance level of about $6,942,000. Now you can see at the bottom you have three categories of fund balance. The one you really want to focus on is at the bottom where we have unassigned fund balance. So that's your unrestricted fund balance level at the end of June 30, 2022, and it was currently at $6,529,000. Another way to look at that is about 14.8% of your annual expenditures in general fund. Now, MDE does not really have a recommended fund balance level for general, but the MSBO does. The MSBO recommends that your fund balance level be anywhere from 15 to 20% of annual expenditures. So at 14.8%, you're right there at the lower part of the recommended fund balance level as provided by the MSBO. Looking at the general fund revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, or the income statement, if you will, you can see the general fund generated about $44.36 million of revenues during the year. You spent about $44,090,000 during the year, so you had a net increase to your general fund balance level of about $270,000 during the year. In looking at general fund revenues by source, comparing 2022 to 2021, you can see in 2021, you generated about $44.24 million of revenues in general and about $44.36 million in 2022. So roughly a 0.264% increase. So pretty similar between the 2 years. The area I really want to focus on with this slide is I want to talk about the relationship with property taxes and state aid, or your state foundation allowance. So you can see in 2022, you generated about $11.1 million in property taxes, and then another $28.9 million in state of Michigan, which is primarily your state foundation allowance. Now, school districts in Michigan are funded on a per student or per pupil basis. So what that means is the state allots you a per student funding before the school year, which for the 21-22 school year was $8,700 per student. And that was a slight increase from 2021. I believe it was about a $335 per student increase from the 2021 school year. But where I'm going with this is the combination of your state foundation allowance and the property taxes you generate during the year can never exceed your per student funding, which is $8,700 per student. So when you generate more in property taxes, you will actually get a decrease in your state foundation allowance so that the combination of those two will never exceed your per student or per pupil funding for the year. So as you can see, when you have a declining student population, obviously you're going to generate less revenues in your general fund. Looking at general fund expenditures by function, again comparing 2022 to 2021, you can see the major function for the district is what we call basic programs. Now, basic programs are the major expenditures for the actual schools themselves. So the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools. So this would be all the salaries and other costs associated with those schools. So it would make sense that basic programs would account for a large portion of expenditures. So you spent about $23.28 million in basic programs, or roughly 53% of your annual budget. Added needs is another major function. Now within added needs, one of the major programs in that is your special education program. That's probably the largest within added needs. So you can see you spent about $5.56 million in added needs, or roughly 12 or 13% of your annual budget. Another major function is operations and maintenance. So you spent about $3,520,000 for operations and maintenance in 2022. In comparing the 2 years, you can see you spent about $41,959,000 grand total in 2021, and that number jumped up to just over $44 million for the 21-22 school year, or roughly a 5% increase. And that's because during 2021-22, you did receive a significant amount of COVID funding that you were required to spend down. So that's what you were seeing during the 21-22 school year. Specifically, the ESSER funds and some of the GEAR funds, which were required to be spent down during the 21-22 school year. Looking at the 10-year historical revenue and expenditure trend for the general fund for the district, here we're going all the way back to 2013. So you can see with revenue starting on the left, really from 2013 all the way through 2020, you were generating about $40 million in revenues grand total in your general fund. And then you see an uptick through 2021 and 2022. And again, as I mentioned previously, that's primarily a result of the extra COVID funding that you received in those 2 school years that you were required to spend down. Now, I want to talk about ESSER and GEAR just briefly, because those are the 2 of the major programs that account for the COVID funding. So a lot of you are familiar with ESSER. That is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund that came out as part of the CARES Act in 2020. So it was very limited in what you could spend the funds on when they first came out. It did become more flexible as time went on, but the funds were primarily used for investing in furniture and equipment for a safe learning environment. You could also use it for equipment and to prevent the spread of COVID, as well as hiring additional support staff. GEAR was focused primarily on connectivity, so connectivity devices were part of the GEAR program. Also, GEAR, one of the major components of it was focusing on student mental health. So student mental health costs were part of the GEAR program. So you can see, looking at expenditures on the right, you see a very similar relationship. You see expenditures staying at about $40 million from 2013 through 2020. Then you start to see an uptick in expenditures through 2021 and 2022 to spend down some of those COVID funds. Looking at your general fund financial data compared to other districts throughout the state. Now, this information is actually provided by the Michigan Department of Education. It's from a bulletin. It's called Bulletin 1011. And the important thing to note about this is the information from the bulletin is actually 1 year behind the district. So we're looking at information from the bulletin for the 2021 school year and comparing it to the district for 21-22. So probably one of the most critical things to look at here in comparison is near the bottom when we look at the total fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures. As I mentioned in one of my first slides, that's one of the major or one of the most critical benchmarks for determining long-term financial health of the district. So you can see, looking at the far right column, when we look at districts of similar size to East China, so that would be school districts with a student population of about 3,500 to 3,999 students. You can see the average was about 18.8%. And then moving over to the left there, you can see the average of all districts throughout the state was actually about 19.27 or 19.28%. So you finished the year at about 15.74%, but again, if you only focus on your unrestricted fund balance, you're at about 14.8%. So you're right there at the low end of the recommended provided by MSBO, and you're a little bit less than the average school district throughout the state of Michigan. The next fund I want to talk about briefly is the debt service fund. So the debt service fund derives its revenues from property taxes. So there's a property tax millage for debt service for people who live throughout the district, and that's to pay down the bonds that are outstanding throughout the district. So in looking at the balance sheet, you can see you finished the year with total assets on hand of about $908,000. You had an ending fund balance level in debt service of about $907,000, and you had total bonds outstanding at June 30, 2022 of $72,505,000. Now, the important thing to note about this fund is that its fund balance level is restricted. In other words, it can't be used for general operating purposes. The fund balance must be used to pay down the bonds. You can see the debt service fund generated about $5,769,000 of property taxes during the year. The other revenues is primarily interest. So it generated just over $6,082,000 of revenues. It spent about $6,064,000. Those are the bond repayments. So you had a net increase to your fund balance level in debt service of about $18,000. But again, as you receive the tax millage in for debt service, it will go out the door to make those debt service payments over time. The last fund I want to talk about briefly is the 2020 Capital Projects Fund. I want to talk about this because this is obviously one of the newer funds for the district, and it's to account for the proceeds of the 2020 Capital Projects Bond for all the major renovations throughout the district. So in looking at the balance sheet, it had total assets on hand of about $65.3 or $65.4 million. Had an ending fund balance level of about $60.5 million. But just like debt service, this is a restricted fund. The capital projects fund balance cannot be used for general operating purposes. It must be used for all the major capital improvements throughout the district as a result of the 2020 bond. The last slide here, this is the income statement for the capital projects fund. You can see the major expenditure here is capital outlay. So for the 21-22 school year, you spent just over $15.7 or $15.8 million on all those major capital improvements as a result of that bond. And some of the major improvements were improvements to Marine City Middle School and High School, as well as St. Clair Middle School and High School, the stadium improvements, improvements to the Innovation Center, and all of those amounted to about $15.7 or $15.8 million during the year. And again, it does have an ending fund balance of $60.5, but those will be spent down over time as the project nears completion. Any questions for me?
Do we have any questions? I don't think so. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our Bond 2020 project update with Mike Thomas. Hello.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to talk again at your board meeting tonight. Quick update. We recently completed some playground upgrades over at Pine River, Palms, and Bell River. We are continuing to wrap up the Innovation Center here and some little minor reservations in the admin area. And we should be turning this area over to you here pretty shortly in the next month or so. And then the big project that's going on, if you drove by St. Clair High, is you're starting to see the masonry walls go up for the new competition gym. So that's starting to take some shape and get some real life to it. And so that's a pretty exciting project going on over there if you're driving by there. So tonight's just a short, quick update. Any questions?
What were the playground, some of the playground updates that you did? What were those?
Replacement of some old, outdated play structures, keeping some that are still have great life to them, and the ones that got replaced, if you drive by them, they're all the shiny new, colorful ones that the kids love to jump around. So I wonder if the ones that stayed are getting used much. So.
And you also replaced all of the,
The mulch,
and everything.
we added to the mulch
Yeah.
that was already there, tried to keep as much as we can and add to it to make it a safe little landing area, not like when we were growing up. So, any questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you
Great.
so much for coming
Thank
this
you.
evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Okay, our next item is our tax collection update. Mrs. Cybula and Mrs. Gleason.
So, good evening, President Frank, members of the board. I wanted to make mention that at each of your seats this evening were two documents stapled together. It was the L4029 that we hear about frequently. It's on the right-hand side, you'll see the L4029. It's the 2022 tax rate request. And what Mrs. Gleason and I would like to do is go through each of the 4 tax levies of the East China School District to provide some clarification and information on each of those areas. So I'm going to let Mrs. Gleason start with the first 2.
Good. Okay, we'll start out with the operating millage. Our operating millage is currently approved at 19 mills. Only 18 mills are levied. That's the maximum allowed for a school district. In-formula public school districts in Michigan receive part of their foundation allowance through their per pupil funding from the state, and the other part comes from the district collecting a non-homestead operational millage. The state assumes that all school districts collect 18 mills, and it would not make up the difference for a district collecting less. This levy will expire on December 31st of 24. And because East China School District is a summer-only tax collection, this levy will need to be renewed before July 1st of 24. The anticipated renewal date for this vote, the anticipated date for the renewal vote is November of 23, but of course the district will seek legal counsel as normal. The next item on the L4029 is the 2018 debt. And this 2018 debt is a 2015 refunding or refinancing of our bus bond, as well as the second series, the 2018 bus bond. This is levied at 0.01 mils and expires in December of 2024. The last collection for this debt will be July 1st of 2024.
The next debt on the L429 is our bond 2020 debt. On March 10th of 2020, the East China School District voters passed a bond for just shy of $113 million for the purpose of remodeling, including security improvements, building addition, furnishing and equipping existing school buildings, acquiring and installing instructional technology and instructional technology equipment, improving playgrounds, athletic fields, athletic facilities, and developing and improving driveways, parking areas, and sites. This bond is levied at 2.83 mils. And as a note, during the bond information sessions, there were about 74 of them, we estimated that the new debt on the bond 2020, including the sinking fund debt, would be about 3.84 mils, and it is currently 3.2392. So it's actually at a better rate than we anticipated during the bond presentations. This debt is currently set to expire on December 31st of 2047, and the last collection for this debt will be July 1st of 2047. The final levy on the L4029 is our sinking fund debt. And in Michigan, a sinking fund is a millage levy to support school safety improvements, technology improvements, and the repair and construction of school buildings. It is a pay-as-you-go system that does not require borrowing money or paying interest. The district is in the planning stages as to when East China School District Sinking Fund will be on the ballot again for our voters. This levy currently raises approximately $800,000 for the district's use. There is a capital projects projections sheet that we have identified sinking fund eligible projects that need to be considered for improvement and repairs. This debt is levied at 0.3992 mils. It expires on 12/31/22, and the last collection for this debt was July 1st of 2022. Since this debt has expired, when we go back to our voters, the ballot language will read that the debt is an increase, even if we ask for the same amount of 0.3992. This is a summary of the district's current collection, levy collections. Could Mrs. Gleason or I answer any questions for you? Thank you.
So I do have a question. I just have a verification. So it expires on December 31st of 22, but the last collection was July 1st, but because we do summer taxes, one-time collection
correct.
summer taxes,
That's
where in
correct.
other districts, it could be a little different.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to 98C learning loss and our continuity of learning plan renewal with Mr. Michael Walling.
Good evening, everybody. I am here to go through the Learning Loss Grant 98C. This is a requirement for the funding source. It's in the preliminary stages of being allocated out to districts throughout the state of Michigan, and this is one of the requirements in order to apply for the funding. So the Section 98C Learning Loss Grant appropriates about $52 million as part of the GEAR and ESSER II funding source. The chief goal of this funding is to address student learning loss in the LEA, which is our local district. This overlaps existing dollars allocated to support learning loss with a tighter timeline, meaning there's additional funding for intervention. A lot of districts have utilized ESSER II and ESSER III funding to address these types of things. This is an additional funding source that needs to be expended by June 30th of 2023, so it's a tight turnaround. The possible allocation is currently believed to be somewhere between $35 and $50 per pupil, and the reason for the range is it depends on how many districts apply for the funding. So using those numbers for the East China School District, it'd be somewhere between $129,115 and $184,450. So right around $150,000 is what we can expect through this funding source. Part of the Board of Education presentation is a synopsis of the data. So on the screen, these are the district's most recent NWEA data points. K through 12, so all of our students in the district take the NWEA assessment 3 times per year. I've been up here a couple different times within the last year going through our district's data. This first slide is for our math assessment that was just completed within the last few weeks across the board. The stars indicate that our district mean RIT, So that's basically the average on the assessment per grade level, scored above the national student achievement norm. So you can see that that took place in math, for kindergarten, first grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. And the other 9 grades were fairly close to what we would expect for the norm. And again, this is just one way to interpret the data. When I've been up here before, we've talked about how a big plus of the NWEA assessment is the growth piece. So that's monitoring how much growth a student makes from the fall to the winter, or from the fall to the spring, or from the fall of one year to the fall of another year. So there's a lot of different ways that our building principals, our interventionists, our classroom teachers look at this data in order to tell the story for our student population. So that's math. Reading, the district mean RIT score above, the same thing with the double stars. So you'll notice kindergarten is performing above the national student achievement norm for the fall, and the other grades are not quite there at this point. And then this should look familiar. We've talked about the diamonds in the bar graph. This is a summary of our district's growth on NWEA from fall to spring. This is one that will require us to get all the way to the spring of 2023 in order to paint the picture for this school year. So this is the data from last year. Again, the goal being we want our bars to be as close to or overlapping those diamonds as possible. The diamonds are where the growth is projected to be, and the rectangles are where we are currently at as of the spring data for our students. So this is for math, and you can see that second grade group has the diamond and the bar graph separated by somewhere in the ballpark of 3 RIT points. And then for reading, the same type of thing. And again, this is one of probably 4 ways that we look at this data, because no one data point and no one way of looking at the data tells the entire story. So there's reading. And so again, these funds have not been allocated to districts, so we don't have a finite dollar amount to work with. And as I had mentioned before, a part of this funding will be to overlap things that we're already doing. So the 4 things that I have listed, some of them we are already doing, some of them will be new ads that we would build in as the funding source comes in. So the top one, K through 8 math individualization and remediation or intervention, resources plus professional development. This is something that's already taking place in our buildings, and so this would be an overlap. After school tutoring for elementary, middle, and high school students. This is something that's already happening to an extent at the high school level, and then it would be a new ad at the elementary and the middle school level. Summer school programming for K through 12. That's obviously something that's already happening, so this would be an overlap use of those funds. And then continued professional development for our K-5 teaching staff, both coaching and consultation as it relates to reading. So our new open court reading program that we utilize, one of the key pieces of that is continuous coaching and consultation from the company provided to our staff. And so that is something that we want to continue to support throughout this year and moving forward. And then the last slide is just a summary of how we intend to measure the impact, or how we do measure impact of different things throughout the district. So obviously we have the NWEA assessment. We look at both achievement and growth as a district, as a building, at a grade level, a classroom, an individual student. Those are just some of the ways that we look at the data as it relates to NWEA. We have certain universal screeners and progress monitoring tools that are in place throughout the district, and this helps us to identify students that are in need of Tier 2 support, and then to progress monitor them as they work through that Tier 2 support in the classroom and out of the classroom. And then finally, classroom formative and summative assessment data, which we will use as part of our data digs and our student success team process. So that's basically quick ongoing assessment pieces, and then summative would be those pieces at the end of a unit or a chapter or a semester, utilizing those data points to help tell the story. So again, that funding source is not here yet, but one of the requirements in order to be able to utilize it is to present to the board kind of where we're at and what we're thinking as we look forward to receiving it. So any questions for me at this point? Yeah.
Yeah. So you say you have tutoring at the high school, but you're going to add it to the elementary and middle schools, correct?
Yeah, so we have through our student centers, we have tutoring, and we also have National Honor Society tutoring. So this would be an opportunity for some of our classroom teachers to be able to tutor students after school in key focused areas in small groups to try and have a meaningful impact. Yes.
Yeah, I've been reading about the high-density tutoring seems to be the #1 thing to increase scores after COVID.
The important part will be getting our qualified professionals in front of our students. A lot of districts, what they're doing is they're utilizing that funding to go out and pay a company to provide digital tutoring for students, which obviously if you have a staffing shortage, that is what it is. But our goal will be to try and pull in East China School District, highly qualified professionals sitting in front of our kids, tutoring them in math and reading predominantly.
And then do we provide transportation home or what?
So all of that is technically built into different funding sources. So not to get too far into the weeds, but Section 11T is another funding source that we have as a district, and that's for at-risk students. And built into that are our transportation pieces that once this funding starts to come into the district, we can explore the logistics of that. But it's all there for us to utilize. Yes.
And all students would be included. It wouldn't have to be economic.
That's where it gets a little tricky. So for this money, yes, this is technically any student that has a need. The Section 11T funding is a series of subgroups. So based off of SES status, special education, 504 plans, immigrant status, homeless students, and that's dictated by the law. So there's different funding sources. That's why I mentioned that overlapping idea and trying to strategically pinpoint how we want to utilize our funds to maximize what it is that we're able to do.
All right, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the second piece on the agenda is the continuity of learning. And I basically have just prepared a statement that I will read, and then I can answer any questions that you have. So as part of the federal requirements with the American Rescue Plan ESSER 3 funding, all districts and other entities receiving funding must maintain status or revise, if necessary, their continuity of services learning plan within 6 months of receiving the grant award notification letter. So for us, that lands on November 24th, so we're well within that time frame. The East China School District is currently operating under a continuity of services learning plan, which was approved at the RESA level prior to this, that allows for the normal operation of the school district, and we will continue to follow this plan. So one of the requirements for ESSER 3 in order to receive that funding source is to regularly look at your continuity of services learning plan. Ours is as it was approved through RESA, and that's what we're operating under. So this is just a requirement that every 6 months we as an administrative team evaluate that and determine if we're good moving forward with it. In this case we are, because it allows us to maintain what it is that we're doing. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Perfect,
Thanks,
thank you.
Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will move into our public comment. We ask that you fill out a green card if you'd like to speak. Did everybody fill out a green card? Okay, so This portion of the agenda is for citizens to address the board. The board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement. Mrs. Sybula will follow up with your questions and concerns. We ask that you please keep your comments civil and limit your time to 5 minutes. And there's a microphone right down here. Alan Richley.
Okay, really quickly to just clarify something about the tax collection. The school board controls when it's being collected, so it doesn't matter when the election is in the year. But anyway, good evening. First, I'm going to start with my favorite quote from Mark Twain. In the first place, God made idiots. This was for practice. Then he made school boards. As you all know, election day is fast approaching. We faced many choices and a crowded field of school board candidates. In fact, there's more candidates than I've ever seen for school board this year. I'm here to speak about two of these individuals and ask some questions on behalf of our community, the incumbents, Lindsay Chapp and Michael Westrick. They both have a record to run on, and in the 5 minutes I have, I believe the community needs to be reminded of their record. I have here a taxpayer-funded postcard that was sent out to voters prior to the May 3rd election with the lie that the sinking fund expires June 30th of 2022, which was their excuse for holding a nearly $60,000 May election instead of free in November. We all know that now that was a flat-out lie. I have here the $3,844.67 bill for that postcard. This invoice was submitted at your June 27th meeting and was dated for the 31st of March. According to meeting minutes from that June 27th meeting, you all voted unanimously with other board members to approve this bill, which brings me to my first question. Is it okay for board administration and the school board to spend taxpayer time and money to spread flat-out false information? Is it okay to lie to the community from your position as an elected official? No response. I mean, that says it all. Not only this, but recently I was told by a fellow citizen that Mrs. Chapp stopped by their house and had a nice talk with them about why she was running, and in this conversation, she said she did not agree with holding the election in May because the cost, and thought that it should have been held in November for free, after the fact. I have here a copy of the meeting minutes from January 24th, and guess who supported that motion? You did, Lindsay. You talk out of both sides of your mouth, and you need to pick a side. You're either with Jeannie Frank and this corrupt superintendent, or you're with the students, parents, and community. You can't have it both ways. This board sat idly by as the superintendent and her minions single-handedly shut down an alternative high school program. And now it will allow hundreds of students to fall through the cracks. Hundreds of people throughout our district signed a petition to stop this, and they still ignored it. Not even a hearing to reconsider this disastrous action. Mrs. Chapp, Mr. Westrick, that's not leadership. This brings me to my next highlight from their time on the board. They directly violated the Open Meetings Act at their February meeting when they appointed Libby in private and already had her plaque ready the day of that meeting. Mrs. Chapp, Mr. Westrick, you violated state law. Nice. At your April and May meetings, you both sat by and watched as Pat Bubuck and Jeannie Frank both went nuts, violated the Open Meetings Act as they adjourned a meeting and then came back, and then violated free speech rights of citizens as they attempted to say their piece. This put the district in a liability situation. Don't get me started on these new board policies that you all voted in favor of. They're a hot mess. You all violated your previous board policy by not bringing that expenditure to the board prior to the superintendent spending it. There was an $11,000 bill that was well over your $10,000 threshold in your former policies. Mrs. Chapp and Mr. Westrick, you either don't read your board policies or willfully violate them. This is your job at bare minimum, and you both failed miserably. In conclusion, you both support wasteful spending, ignoring the voices of students, parents, and this community, violate state statutes, and hold your own board policies, as well as federal civil rights laws, and you lied to the people and used taxpayer money to do it. I will end with one of my favorite quotes from Edmund Burke. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Remember to vote November 8th. Thank you.
Debbie Burgess? Debbie Burgess?
Good evening. My name's Debbie Burgoyes. I'm the program director at River Rec Teen Zone. And I just wanted to talk to you tonight about a few things that we have going on over there. We have just been at the conferences at Marine City Middle School talking about tutoring that we offer every Tuesday and Thursday. I think now that conferences are over, some students and their families might be a little interested in having some tutoring, so we offer that every Tuesday and Thursday, or by arrangement as needed. They can contact us. We're located in the old City Hall building, in the old Marine City Hall building, and we're open 2:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, and then again for special events. One of the special programs that we have coming up that has just been announced, but there's a really quick deadline for that, is the Student Artist Mentorship Program. All the information is available right now with the art teachers, and of course it's available at on our website and at our location as well. That program offers students an opportunity to learn the actual business of being an artist, and it lasts for the entire school year and culminates in a gallery showing of their artwork that they've worked on. River Rec Teen Zone sponsors this program along with New Century Art Gallery, and a lot of students are pretty excited about it. They've talked about how much they gained from doing it last year, and we're really happy to offer that again this year. We're hoping to work on an actual gallery exhibition right that Thanksgiving weekend for district students to showcase and sell their artwork to help pay for their trip to New York City. We really wanted to help promote that, and we know that not all, it was a hefty price tag, and not all students who want to go could potentially afford it. So we're hoping to put together a gallery exhibition at River Rec for students to be able to sell their artwork. We will also be having, in connection with Marine City Chamber of Commerce, Maritime Christmas, we're offering a Santa's workshop for kids to come in and do some make and take crafts and just have fun, that kind of thing. And last but not least, this is the very last weekend to come and visit our haunted house. And our students are so excited about putting on this haunted house, and they have done a really great job. So the haunted house is Friday and Saturday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's a $10 donation that goes to River Rec Teen Zone, which is a nonprofit. And everybody has really, really enjoyed it so far. So make sure to mark your calendars and get out there for our very last weekend of the haunted house. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next item is our public hearing concerning proposed policy 5207, anti-bullying. Mrs. Saibula.
I'm going to read the resolution for anti-bullying policy 5207. Whereas on September 26, 2022, the board repealed the board's then existing policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines and adopted the Troon Law Firm Policy Manual, except that the board retained its board policy 5517 concerning student bullying, pending a statutorily required public hearing on proposed policy 5207, anti-bullying, in the policy manual. And whereas consistent with the revised school code section 1310B MCL 380.1310B, the board held a public hearing on October 24th, 2022 concerning proposed policy 5207, anti-bullying, which would replace the board's existing policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines concerning student bullying. And whereas the board has carefully considered proposed policy 5207, anti-bullying, the administration's recommendation, and information and comments provided during the public hearing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that, number one, the board accepts the administration's recommendation to adopt policy 5207, anti-bullying. Number two, policy 5207, anti-bullying is hereby adopted and replaces all existing board policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines concerning student bullying. Number 3, the board's adoption of policy 5207 will take immediate effect. Number 4, the administration shall promptly review the East China School District's publications and forms that may reference the now repealed student bullying policy and revise those publications and forms as necessary to align with the newly adopted policy 5207 within 30 calendar days after this resolution. Number 5, all resolutions and parts of resolutions insofar as they conflict with the provisions of this resolution be and the same are hereby rescinded.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, the board will receive public comment on the proposed policy 5207, anti-bullying. Are there any public comments? Okay, let the record reflect there were no public comments, and this will close the public hearing portion of our meeting, and we will now proceed to our action items. Our first action item this evening is our New York City art student trip. The administration recommends that the Board of Education approves the New York City art student trip as presented at the September 26, 2022 regular meeting. A motion is needed.
So moved.
Support.
Any comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is our student handbooks. Per administration's recommendation, the Board of Education approves the elementary, middle school, high school, and Riverview handbook revisions as reviewed at the September 26, 2022 Board of Education meeting. A motion is needed.
So moved.
Support.
Any comments or questions?
I just was curious as to the changes or the taking out of some of the language for the dress code for the middle school and high school.
Mrs. Dimick?
Mrs. Dimick, please.
Good evening. We did make changes to the secondary handbooks as far as the dress code in collaboration with the principals. It's becoming a little bit more difficult for some of these kids to be able to find clothes that fit the dress code as it was originally written. And so taking that out, it still provides the principals with discretion as to what is appropriate and what's needed for students to be able to change or needed to change. But unfortunately, with today's fashions, it's becoming more difficult to be able to abide by some of those regulations. A little different at the elementary schools where clothing is a little more discreet, I guess is the best word.
Yeah, I guess I just thought it was interesting because it was kept in with the elementary, like no showing the midriff and the tank top and how long your shorts should be, and then that was eliminated from the middle and high school. And I just didn't know why we would not want to keep the standards, especially at that level when kids need guidance still, right?
Right. And I think the principals, you know, they do use their discretion as far as what is required, keeping in mind the guidelines within the policies to provide for the students.
Which it was, yeah. From what I noticed, it's pretty much just dress what is appropriate for school was kind of how it's outlined for the kids. Okay.
So what guideposts exactly then are we giving to students?
I mean, what's in the handbook, but if it's something that is inappropriate, a lot of times it'll just be a warning that, you know, that's not something that is appropriate for school, and then they're addressing it that way. Sometimes they're going to the old-fashioned, here, put this sweatshirt on and don't do that next time, things like that. Or calling parents and having them bring clothes, so we don't want kids to miss school because of it either. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Dawn.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a motion is on the table. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye. Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, the next item is the 2020.
Can I just clarify, did we have one nay?
Yes. Okay, our next item is our 2021-22 audit. A motion is needed for the Board of Education to accept the audit report for fiscal year 2021 to 22 as prepared and presented by McBride, Manley and Company, PC, this evening.
So motion.
Support.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And our last item is our Board Policy 5207, anti-bullying. The administration recommends that the Board of Education accept the administration's recommendation to adopt Policy 5207, anti-bullying, and replace all existing board policies, bylaws, and administrative guidelines concerning student bullying. The motion is needed.
So moved.
Support.
Any comments or questions?
Just a quick question. In side-by-side comparison, I didn't see any major differences. Was there anything substantial in any definitions
No.
from one policy to the other?
No.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening.